expanding the kingdom of Vortia with a new clan, going on a crusade against the violent Battanians, and seeing if I have the strength to do what needs to be done? This one is a wild one, so strap in to see countless battles and sieges as the journey of Inric continues. Today I played 600 days of Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. Things were not looking good at the castle of Uthelheim. There were only 119 defenders inside of the castle, and I had 115 in my party. That mere 234 troops isn't going to be enough to take on the 530 Battanians. I was desperate. I tried to recruit some more troops at a nearby village, but it just wasn't going to be enough. At this point, the castle was lost, even though they didn't technically own it. Not only was Uthelheim being sieged, but a village was also being raided. I figured that I would have a better chance defending the village than this castle. So, I ended up giving up on it, and I headed over to the village of Bogbeth in a rush. I felt very much like a coward just giving away that castle, but sometimes you need to know when to fight and when to be smart about things. What do we have here? On the way to Bogbeth, I ran into one of the Hidden Hands clan members. He only had 28 in his party, so it was an easy victory. That's a decent amount of loot for a small party. It appeared that the village of Bogbeth was no longer being attacked anymore. Those villagers really deserve a medal for fighting off the Battanians. My priority now changed from having to defend to going on the offense. I guess we'll see how long that lasts for. After I took out another small Battanian party, I checked on the war report. Since it pretty much had just begun, I wasn't able to get any useful info out of it. Nogan's party is under attack. Hopefully he can hold out until I get there. No, my brother has been captured. It seemed useless to head back over that way because I knew that the party who attacked him was going to be long gone. I guess the only thing to do now is build up the army and take out as many Battanian parties as I can. Oh yeah, and I'll have to protect Sylvan. So that's exactly what I did. I ran up on another Battanian party that was half of my size. These guys really didn't even stand a chance, and I now had myself another prisoner. Oh, thank you very much for the loot. I made my way onward to Carbanseth, the town that I currently owned. That was when I saw a huge army of 688 Battanians. I immediately told Sylvan to join forces and headed over to handle the situation. Surprisingly enough, it looked like the giant army had gone right past Carbanseth and to the castle of Pendraic. I tried baiting the Battanians away from Pendraic by getting up close and personal, but it didn't work. They were determined. Once the castle was laid to siege, I immediately snuck in, losing a little bit of my troops. There's no way that I would be able to defeat this army fighting them out in a flat field. Utilizing the walls and catapults are realistically my only option. This strategy has worked in the past and it'll work now. It seemed like the enemy troops had prepared 2 siege towers. I decided that we needed to ambush them and take them out. There was a perfect opportunity where only a small amount of enemy troops were guarding the siege equipment. They also had a battering ram that I didn't even notice until now. My cavalry got straight to work. They attacked the battle lines as they passed through to attack the siege tower. I had them focus in on the one on the right side first. This tower had a lot more troops guarding it than the left side, so it really made sense to attack this one with our fresh troops before attacking the other one. It wasn't long until the tower came crumbling down, and I rerouted my troops to the next one. I do have to say, for an ambush, the enemies were mobilizing pretty quickly. They kept reinforcing their troop lines as quickly as they possibly could. The second siege tower crumbled even quicker than the first one. It was now time to ride back into the castle. Almost everyone was able to make it back into the walls. That was except for one horseman that looked like he was stuck. I headed back over to see what was going on. No man left behind. When I made it over to the lone horseman, I saw that he was stuck on something. I tried guiding him out and was successful. We could now retreat back into the safety of the castle. Now that was an intense ambush. Real quick, if you're enjoying the video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for more. If you want to get more involved in the Vortide community, check out the Discord linked down below. There is some really cool lore that brings some of the videos together, and a cool leveling system. Join now. The enemies were doing their best to rebuild the siege equipment that they had just lost. I even was able to utilize my catapults to take out a ballista they constructed. It felt like it took a century, but the enemies are finally ready to attack. We had around 400 troops and they had around 650. Let's see how this goes. I divided my archers into small groups and placed them throughout the different catapults on the walls. That way we have enough troops at each one to actually fire them off. Of course, I made sure that I was at one of them too, so I could shoot fireballs down at the enemies. I ended up launching my flaming rocks into the air, just to see how far they would go. We weren't in range to hit the enemies yet. I in theory could have hit the left siege tower. The thing is, there weren't any enemy troops directly behind it though, and I wanted to take out as many of those as I possibly could. I wasn't really worried about the towers themselves. Nice. Let's refocus up. Come on, bring some rocks over. Let's see this. Okay. Why is it taking so long to load this thing? Huh? One single soldier? Okay. After quite a few not so successful shots, I finally hit one that was insane. What can I say, my catapult skills are a little bit rusty, but that shot alone makes up for it. Let's go, we did it! It's always the best feeling in the world after a large castle siege to lock up all of your enemies in prison. They were just trying to take over this castle, and now they're sitting in the dungeon. Now that's ironic. In addition to things being ironic, it's also kinda awkward. Caladog, the High King of Battania, was also in that siege, and now he's my prisoner. I don't think that this war is going to be going on for very long. With the siege wrapping up, I headed out to take out any of the enemies who might have escaped. That was when I saw a small caravan being attacked by a Battanian party. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to save the caravan. I was, however, able to get revenge. I happened to notice that the Battanians were also at war with the Sturgians. This put me at an advantage. We should, in theory, see a lot weaker Battanian armies now, especially if the Sturgians are on the offense. I felt like a bounty hunter because I was going around and taking out each Battanian party one by one. They were a lot smaller than mine because me and Sylvan had joined together, so having 230 troops was very overpowered, especially when most of the other party sizes were anywhere from 60 to 100. The war was pretty much balanced out. I lost a castle, and most of the Battanians were imprisoned and lost over thousands of troops. It seemed like all I had to do was to continue taking out the Battanian parties, even if they were small. We just need to tip the tide of the war in our favor, and then we can get free money from Battania. Or maybe I could even expand the empire with a new city or two. I continued doing my job of patrolling the kingdom and taking out as many Battanians as I could. That was when the Sturgians had randomly offered me a non-aggression pact. I'm assuming this is because we were both at war with the Battanians. Now that I had a minute to breathe, I stopped at Carbanseth. Oh no, the loyalty's at a level so low that we could have another rebellion here. To avoid this, I told Nogan to take over the city. He has a perk that allows the loyalty to increase by 1. This also seemed like the perfect job for him as he had just escaped captivity and made it back to the castle. I really thought that it would be a good idea to expand the kingdom currently so we could raise a bigger army and take over more castles. The only issue with that idea is that I have to convince someone. So I approached a random lord that was in a clan only and sent a message out to the clan leader. I then continued my torment against the Battanians, taking out every single Battanian party that even got close to my territories. It was pretty funny because I was getting so much loot from taking out all of these armies that I wasn't even able to sell all of it at my city. I did, however, get a nice 40k from selling a pretty large chunk of it. This time, when I checked the war report, I saw that I had 23 Battanian prisoners, and they had 0 of mine. I also inflicted double the amount of casualties to them that they have to us. I realized that I was over my capacity on things that I could carry, because I was getting way too much loot from these enemies. I dropped off almost everything that wasn't horses or food in the town of Carbanseth. I planned on selling it once the war was over. When the loot was fully secured, I headed back out and attacked even more enemies. Honestly, I think we could consider this a crusade at this point. Well, I guess besides the holy part, but we were basically going around taking out all of the Battanian parties that we could get our hands on. These events will go down in history as the first Vortian Crusade. I even decided that it was a good idea to attack one of the villages nearby our territories. The Battanians had done this to my 2 villages that were adjacent to this one. It's time to get some revenge. As I was raiding the village and slowly collecting all of the loot, I saw a whole bunch of enemies start to pull up. We were surrounded, but the enemies weren't confident enough to actually attack me, or at least it seemed that way. I decided to charge them head first and take on these 6 different generals with Sylvand. When I deployed the troops, I made sure that I had a line of archers all the way in the back, a line of infantrymen holding a shield wall directly in front of them, and then my horsemen on the left side. This formation is my signature strategy against larger enemies. Just because they all run into the shield wall in the middle, I charge my horsemen in from the side, and my archers do a bunch of damage as they approach. I honestly have no clue what the Battanians were thinking, but they sent one of their flagmen all the way to the front of the battlefield. I was able to take him out before our armies even collided. Now that's embarrassing. My strategy was working exactly as planned. The enemy started to charge my shield wall, and I was about to call the horsemen in. When the cavalry arrived, it was GG. The enemy stood no chance. I think I saw 1 red death on the screen, while the rest of them were all green. In other words, we completely demolished them. Well, this is awkward. That's at least another 5 generals. Despite taking heavy casualties, it was definitely worth it to have taken that fight. We took out so many Battanians, and we also gained another 5 prisoners. I once again was over capacity with items, so I headed to Kharbanseth and started selling a bunch of them. I ended up getting around 22,000 coins from the loot that I brought over, and I was still over capacity. Oh, it looks like somebody wants to propose a marriage. Alda? Probably not. I won't have any other people to run armies then. I finished taking out another Battanian lord, and that was when I realized something that I wish I had noticed sooner. The castle of Druamore only had around 200 defenders. This would be an easy siege, and it's in such a strategic location. This seemed like it was too good of a deal to be true. It would be way too easy to take over this castle, especially when all of my troops fully heal. Alright, let's do this. I got a good feeling. I started off with my usual bum rush strat. We were running up to the ladders as fast as possible and hoping to scale them before the enemies got into position. Get those ladders up, boys. If you asked any of my men about me, Enric of Vortia, they would tell you that I'm a very hands-on leader. I like to get dirty in the battles right away. There is none of this stay in the back while my troops fight it out kind of thing. Let's go, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on. Oh, jeez. Oh, this is kind of awkward. Oh my gosh, there's only hammers on the ground, what the heck? Oh no. Oh. Whew. Come on, boys. As we made it onto the actual walls, it was already over. We basically had this castle in the bag. My troops and I made it all the way over to the keep. We rushed it and made sure that there were no survivors. We were victorious. Obviously, since Clan Vortide was the only clan in the Kingdom of Vortia, I was able to take this castle for myself. There were no disputes over it. Well, I guess I can't say no disputes. The Battanians definitely thought it was theirs. But it's not anymore. I was really considering making peace, but I would have to pay 1,000 dinars per day, which was not worth it because I was clearly smoking these guys. I had to grind out Battanian parties, which is pretty crazy to say, but I want to make sure that I don't have to pay any money if I propose peace. Now honestly, that peace isn't gonna last for long. I just need to buy myself a little bit of time so I could build up a huge army and finish off the Battanians. I then ended up checking the loyalty in Kharbanseth. It was dangerously low at 15. Nogan was doing a very good job at keeping it stable, but it wasn't increasing, which is what we really needed. I checked out the castle that we had just captured, and it looked like the loyalty wasn't too bad here. It was at 51. That's much better than the town at least. I headed to Pendraic. I hadn't been there since the last siege. I knew that this was one of my older castles, so it was a lot more stable. I made sure that a fairground was being constructed there, as well as at the castle of Neviansk. Well, things should be good over there for a while now. I once again made my way back over to the town of Karbanseth. I decided to throw 10,000 dinars into the city's reserve, so that way they would be able to construct the fairground a lot quicker when I actually needed to construct it. Right now, we just need to focus on its loyalty. I then sold a bunch of goods at the market and headed over to the next nearest city to sell even more goods for around 70,000 dinars. Now that's pretty crazy. I honestly didn't believe it at first, but I had over 1 million dinars. The Kingdom of Vortia has really come a long way. I still remember the days when I wasn't even able to afford a 20-man party. The Castle of Neviansk had finished its fairgrounds upgrade. This meant that we got at least +1 loyalty per day. I then started the workshop as its next construction. This would increase how much we could build per day. While I was chilling at Karbanseth, I decided to check out my kingdom's stats, and that was when I realized I had almost no caravans formed. This was because they had been taken out during the war with the Battanians. I re-enlisted all of my companions to form new caravans. I didn't want to lose out on a whole bunch of money that I could be making. Be free, my caravans! So, how am I going to build up this huge army of mine? The problem isn't the dinars. It's having someone who wants to actually join my army and fight against the rest of the world. Everyone knows that we're the smallest kingdom here, and we're definitely outnumbered. So it's quite obvious that joining the Kingdom of Vortia is a huge risk. I ended up sending out a messenger to the Brotherhood. This was a clan that had a pretty good reputation, plus they were Vlandian. I ended up striking a deal with them to join the kingdom as mercenaries. This pretty much just meant that I was paying them to fight off the Battanians, or at least whoever I go to war with, which is probably going to be the Battanians anyways. It was pretty nice to see another clan in the Kingdom of Vortia. Now we just need to get a few more. With the Brotherhood being a lower tier clan and being kinda new, I decided to donate them 10,000 dinars. This increased our relationship by 3, which was pretty awesome. I guess that's what you call paid friendship. Who would have thought that would actually work? I wasn't very happy with the Battanian troops that I had. Sure, they were decent, but I felt that the Vlandians had a lot stronger soldiers. So I tried going around hiring as many of the best troops that I possibly could. With the Castle of Neviansk and Pendraic both being pretty stable, I decided to take Nadia and Alda out of the castles. They would now be serving as commanders in my army. At least that's what I'm going to want them to do for the next crusade against the Battanians. I made sure to act on that right away, so as I got Nadia, I told her to form her own party and start building it up. Alda was next. I grabbed her from Pendraic and told her not to form her party just yet, but to be ready to. Wow, Nogan, I'm impressed. You increased the loyalty at the town of Karbanseth. Out of absolutely nowhere, the Brotherhood of the Woods had left the Kingdom of Vortia. They went to go fight for the Aserai. I really don't know why, but I guess it probably had something to do with we weren't really fighting any wars at the moment. Since mercenaries clearly weren't reliable, I decided to take things into the hands of my companions. Well, at least into one of their hands. His name is Genulf Barrelchest, and he happened to have some of the best stats for leading a party. That's exactly why I started giving him some of the better armor pieces in my inventory. I didn't want him to have to lead a clan while not having strong armor. It was now time to expand the Kingdom of Vortia by introducing a new clan to it. The only downfall of creating this new clan was that I have to donate one of my castles to them in order for it to be official. I gave Genulf Druamore Castle because it was the one that I had just taken, and it was also a very strategic position. My whole thought process behind this is that knowing this is an important castle and it's the only one that he has, Genulf is going to have to defend this thing with his life. The only actual requirement that I had for his clan was that its name had to start off with a V. After suggesting Vale, he quickly accepted it and said that that was fine. Welcome, House Vale, to the Kingdom of Vortia. By royal decree, I, Enric of Vortia, state that every single clan going forward has to have the letter V in the beginning of their name. It appeared that Genulf had brought in 2 other people into his clan. I didn't even know who they were, but they were 2 more warriors who were fighting for me, and I guess 2 more people who had parties. I honestly don't even know why I ended up giving Genulf some armor, because I forgot that I had given him some money to buy some as well. Let's just say he didn't hold back. I then made my way over to the Vale Castle. I ended up meeting another person named Genulf. He explained to me that he was the brother of the other Genulf that I had just promoted. They were twins. That's low-key kinda crazy. The Battanians were surely watching me because they ended up declaring war the very next day after the rise of House Vale. I instantly formed a party with Sylvan and Nadia, and we were around 420 strong. It really was a smart idea because I found myself in a sticky situation right after. A pretty large Battanian army of 400 troops was attacking mine, and it was time to show them who's boss. They can't just keep declaring war on us and think that they can get away with it. They're not going to get their castles back, obviously. The battle broke loose and both of our front lines had completely clashed. I sent my horsemen in on the side as usual, but it seemed like things weren't working out as well as I thought they would. I don't know why they got caught up in that corner over there. After a little while of fighting, things started to turn in our favor quite a bit. The enemies had around half of the strength that we did. It was at this point that I knew the battle was already over and we had won. Another large group of Battanian troops were heading directly for me. As usual, I started to charge them head on. It looked like we were outnumbered by a decent amount, but I knew that we could take on these enemies as the Vortian troops were just more experienced and overall better fighters. I happened to be completely right. We had taken out the enemy army and only lost a quarter of our troops. Now that's pretty impressive if you ask me. Right after the battle, I upgraded every single troop that I possibly could. This kept our edge on the enemies because they had numbers on their side, while we had a lot stronger and more experienced troops. Oh no, another battle incoming. I wasn't even fully healed from the last one yet, and I was already being chased by more Battanians. Like I said, they have numbers, and that's it. I ended up riding for quite a while, just so that way I could heal up my troops and then take on the enemies. Once I had around 250, I engaged the Battanian armies. The green hordes were preparing to attack my infantrymen. I sat on the sidelines with a pretty large number of cavalry ready to charge into their back or rear. That's exactly what I did once the enemy infantrymen got distracted. They were attacking my infantrymen, and we hit them from the back. Honestly, our infantrymen got wiped out pretty quickly. They were almost all gone, and now the enemies were attacking our archers. Good thing we have such powerful horsemen. As expected, we won the battle with no issue. I now had 2 more Battanian nobles as prisoners. We for sure took a lot of casualties from that battle. I didn't give my party a whole lot of time to heal up before we engaged the next group of enemies. This one was so small that it didn't even matter though. I came to a realization that the Battanian hordes wouldn't stop coming. It seemed like they just had so many troops that they could raise so quickly. It honestly kinda made me desperate. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do about it, and I considered potentially executing all of the Battanian lords. I decided that this wasn't the right thing to do though. I decided this for obvious moral reasons, and also, everyone who was friends with that lord would become my enemy. I was just getting so sick of the constant attacks from the Battanians. It seemed like we were never gonna have peace at this rate. But since we had taken over another one of their towns, it definitely was gonna come to an end soon. I just needed to hang in there. My army was exposed to another pretty large battle. This one was a little bit different though. We were on the offense. Usually when I fight these, we don't have an advantage against the enemies, but this time we did. So they all just kinda cowered in the back and waited for us to engage. I moved all of my troops up right in front of the enemy army. I then told my archers to get a little bit further up and start raining down arrows at them. This strategy felt really slow. I did see some of the Battanian troops getting taken out though, so it was definitely working. We just needed to be patient. After quite a while of barraging the enemies, I decided it was time to finally charge in. I had my cavalry charge into this side, and my infantrymen slowly approach. I was attempting to attack the Battanians on 2 different sides, But this was very hard because of how they were positioned between some rocks. I gotta give it to them, they chose a really good area to defend. It wasn't gonna be enough to let them win the battle though. The location wasn't gonna make up for their poor quality of troops. It appeared that once again I had a whole bunch of loot that needed to be sold off. So that's exactly what I did at Karbaseth. I sold about 44k worth of loot. Hey, what the heck do you think you're doing? Get away from my villagers. At this point in the war, it didn't even seem like there was much going on anymore. The Battanian parties were scattered, and they kept trying to make bigger ones, but it just wasn't working. I had even captured around 18 Battanian nobles that were now just sitting in the dungeon of Karbaseth. I ended up noticing something that was absolutely huge. The Vlandians were fighting the Battanians. This meant that they were also at war with each other. I have absolutely no idea why they would decide to do something like this, but hey, it makes it even easier for us now. This could honestly be the best opportunity for us to launch a second crusade against these Battanians. I have a feeling that this time's gonna be a little bit different though. I rallied as many troops as I possibly could and started sieging the town of Dungelannis. I was honestly a little bit paranoid about all the Vlandian parties that came by. This siege was basically an attempt to keep all of the Vlandian parties away. I really didn't want them to come by and take the town for themselves. Once I saw that the nearest Vlandian party was gone, I then stopped the siege and started a new party with Alda. I needed to make sure that I had as many troops as I possibly could because it looked like there were over 700 defenders in the town. At this point, it felt like a waiting game. I pretty much just posted up outside of Dungelannis and waited for the other nobles to build up their parties so we could finally take over this town. Oh no, I see Vlandians. We're chilling though. That's right, you thought. Our army was now over 700 strong, so it felt like the appropriate time to try and take on the castle. I knew that the fight would at least be even. I got the idea though to try a different strategy this time. I started building as much catapults and trebuchets as I possibly could. I was hoping to take down at least one of the walls so that way we had easy access into the castle. The camp finished constructing. It was now time to get the first trebuchet up. It didn't really take that long, but once it was constructed, it took out one of the enemy catapults and started inflicting some damage on the walls. All I have to say is I'm happy that we started this siege when we did. An army of over 1,000 Vlandians had rode by. I knew that if I wasn't sieging this castle, they definitely would have taken it. The siege continued on as I kept constructing more trebuchets. I focused on building the left side ones first. It seemed like they were very efficient at taking out all of the catapults, and I knew that that wall was already almost destroyed. I then constructed some trebuchets on the right side, and the left wall crumbled. Soon after, the right followed it. It appeared that it was now time to launch the invasion. I immediately told all of the troops to just charge into the little gaps that we made in the castle walls. This should be the easiest siege of our lives. I moved in ahead of the rest of my troops and started taking out as many of the enemies that I could with my crossbow. It wasn't long until the Vortian soldiers started to rush into the little gap in the castle wall. While the bulk of my army took care of things over here, I decided to go over to the right side and see if I could sneak in behind all of the enemies. A small detachment of troops ran over to this side. I was able to break through the enemy lines on horse and get into the castle. I even tried going up the stairs that led onto the wall, but my horse got kinda scared. At this point, I planned on just inflicting as much damage as I possibly could and disrupting the defending troops. My men made it onto the enemy walls and were now inside of the settlement. The Battanians were trying to set up a little choke point. It seemed like this was gonna be their last stand. I tried disrupting it as much as I possibly could, just in time for my troops to get over. To be honest, the Battanians were defending this castle in the best way that they possibly could. I honestly couldn't think of any other strategies that they could have employed to win this battle. It was just an overall really hard siege. The defenders were no longer focusing on the gap in the wall. It seemed like they built a little semicircle around the choke point that my troops had to run through. I knew that it wasn't going to last for long, so I rode all the way to the back line of the enemy archers. And boy, was there a lot of them. As we had taken out all of the enemy infantrymen, it looked like the archers were making their last stand. 3/4 of them had pulled out swords and started to take on my infantrymen, while the other quarter had retreated back inside of the keep. It only took a matter of seconds for the archers to break formation and all just start running back into the castle. The town was ours at this point. We now just needed to siege the actual keep. I chose my very best troops for this last battle. When we made it inside, we were met with a whole bunch of archers. There was even a wooden formation that spiraled all the way along the walls up until the tippy top. There happened to be 1,000,000 archers placed on top of it, and they were just raining down arrows on us, so I had to start shooting them as my troops went in to deal with climbing the tower. As I waited for them to get up there, I took a lot of damage from the enemy arrows. This forced me to put my crossbow away and take out my shield and spear. I was on the brink of death. If I got hit by one more arrow, I would surely die. I couldn't take any more injuries. My life was really in the hands of my troops at this point, and thankfully they prevailed. They cleared out all of the rest of the archers, and the throne was now mine. We did it! The Kingdom of Vortia had captured another town. The Battanians were surely fuming about this because we owned 2 of their settlements now, as well as a couple of their castles. It appeared that in retaliation to what had just happened, the only Battanian army left decided to attack one of my villages. In other words, they basically betrayed their own people just because I had recently captured their settlement. Things were going great in the war. The enemies were clearly at a disadvantage, and they only had 1 settlement left. This was absolutely crazy. The Battanians had been bothering us ever since we got our very first castle. Now, after the 2 Vortian Crusades, they have nothing left except this 1 settlement. I attempted to talk to the Vlandians who are still at war with the Battanians. They didn't really give me any information on any of their battle plans, but if they were the ones who were going to go after this last settlement, I honestly wouldn't even care. I made my way over to the last settlement, Marinoth. It appeared that there were a whole bunch of Battanian parties, all scattered throughout and not united into one. It definitely appeared that they were in complete and utter chaos. To further prove my point, the Battanians had made a peace offer to me, stating that they would pay me over 1,000,000 dinars. This just seemed like it was too good of a deal to pass up. Even though I would be able to take out this settlement with ease, I knew that I needed the money, as I was gonna have to take on the rest of Calridia. It was so weird seeing that I owned more towns and castles than the Battanians. I knew that this break in the war wasn't gonna last for long, and if it did, I wasn't gonna let it. I wanted to make sure that every single Battanian settlement was gone. So once the peace deal is up, I'm gonna head back and take over that settlement if the Vlandians didn't do it already. To make sure our kingdom was in order, I went to every castle and town to check the loyalty levels of each one. These next few months are about to be epic.